Stephanie Cook is an Atlanta-based licensed clinical social worker and certified Gottman couples therapist who runs Couples Counseling ATL, a group practice dedicated to helping couples create real connection and lasting happiness using the Gottman method, counseling, and workshops. She and her husband have a toddler and a baby, and when they manage to get out for a date night, they love to ride bikes and stand-up comedy, which makes a lot of sense to me because you're always posting really funny things on Facebook.
Thank you.
And
Thank
also,
you.
welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I did notice, though, that, well, everyone likes to laugh, right? But you have a particular affinity for comedy or funny things.
I do. I do. I think that's very Stephanie, as
There you
my
go.
friends say that I'm the comedic relief when we get together. So I love to laugh.
It's an important role to fill. Well, what's missing from your bio? Obviously, a lot, an entire lifetime worth of a bio. But what else? What else do you want people to know about you?
Well, I think for me, like many therapists, it's been a long and winding road
Mm,
to where I'm at, and I think I've always loved listening as much as I'm an extrovert, and you may be annoyed at how much I talk. I really do love to listen and to hear, especially people's stories. And since I was young, I know that that's been just something I've always loved. And so I started out, I think probably as early as a teenager. I volunteered at a teen crisis shelter. That's kind of where I first fell in love with this role. I had the fun title of peer counselor at age
that's
14.
how it all begins.
Yep. And then so that's where I think I got hooked. But it's been really rewarding, I think, to be a counselor, especially at this phase of my life with two young kids.
Mm.
It's so flexible um, and I just love it.
They give you those. They give you a title. I had that title in middle school. I was like a peer mentor, even though I'm
Uh-huh.
like the same age as these kids. I'm in like sixth grade, but it's basically like who's a nice kid who's not going to bully the new kids and generally doesn't like overwhelm people. Let's have him be the peer mentor, which is like the miniature therapist of sixth grade. And I carried that title all of middle school.
I didn't know that, John. That's awesome.
And then it did nothing for me when it came to applying to colleges and other things in life.
I know, right? You're like,
But
I should get credit for
it
this.
was an honor, still is an honor.
That is an honor.
But you got
That's
pinned as a good
oh
listener.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was queen of the dorks too. I mean,
Mm,
that was
that
my
helps.
that was my role was not just comedic relief, but I volunteered all the time
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
didn't make it out to many parties. I had to wait till college for
Well,
that. So
dorks have so much more empathy because what I find is that like the dorks are like the coolest kids now that we're adults.
yeah,
And every
yeah.
time I go home, I'm like, it is the dorks who are like cooler and are just still nice people. Meanwhile, the jerks are like trying to make up for lost time and they're just going around apologizing at high school reunions. And everyone's like, yeah, it's okay, but also it's not because you ruined
That's
my life for the most formative years of my adolescence. And, you know,
Have you made it back to reunion, John? Have you made it back to any?
that's a sensitive subject because we've never had one. That's how
Oh,
that's how much discord was in my graduating class that we haven't even had one because the class president like pitched the idea or like made a Facebook group and said who's coming to our first reunion, and there was only like four people. It was really
um,
sad. So that's how
that's so
clicky
cool.
things were. It's awful. So it's never gonna happen. I'm never gonna get that, and I really really want it. I'm gonna have to go to someone
Well,
else's.
they need a peer counselor to help
Yeah.
reunite
We
everyone
need
and
better
have some
leadership. Yeah.
leadership. Ah, that's amazing.
So
You could
when
have a circle or something
yeah.
and have some group processing for past
Hmm.
damage.
I'm sure that wouldn't freak anyone out.
Oh, that makes me laugh. I won't go into it too much, but just the you're so right about the dynamics there with with even with my high school. I remember having so much anxiety about going back for a reunion, and it was a blast. I ended up having a great time, but it's you just regress. Like I remember
Hmm.
suddenly feeling like a 16-year-old again, and oh, does this person like me? And
Mm.
all the same dynamics. So it's nice to have already gone and had a good experience and to not have the same level of anxiety anymore.
So, what was the point for you when you realized, like, I want to do this for money?
Well, I actually started out after college. I was a psych major, like many of us, psych and English. But I thought I would just always want to volunteer, and then I thought,
Mm.
when I thought of therapy or I thought of psychology, I thought of not making money.
Hmm.
And so I remember thinking I would like to make money. So I will just volunteer and do this sort of peer counseling role or work in a shelter kind of role separate. So it took a year or two after graduating in sales and marketing to realize I actually don't want to do this business marketing role. And I took a huge pay cut to go into the nonprofit world.
So
I
you
kept
worked in
thinking of,
sales and marketing.
I
Oh, okay.
did
I didn't know that.
just for, yeah, for just a year or two
Mm.
after college.
And that was
Um,
enough.
that was enough. I did very well, but I also did not enjoy the role that I was in.
Mm.
So it was it was interesting though because looking back, I've talked to my husband many times about this. Of course, we need sales and marketing for therapy
Hmm.
as well and for our business. But it's very different when you really believe in something that you're selling and something that you're providing a service.
Hmm.
So it was a great asset, and I ended up using a lot of those skills later, much later when I went into private practice. But I was in nonprofit for a long time before,
Mm.
so so even when I had a big pay cut and started working for Youth Villages, this nonprofit based out of Memphis, doing in-home kind of family services. I loved it. People were dropping like flies around me. We out of maybe the 200 people who started with me, 2 years later, only maybe 10 of us were left.
Wow.
Um, so as you know, with many of us who have been in the nonprofit world, it's tough. You're frontline. But I just loved it. I loved families and I
Now,
loved,
how were you able to stick it out?
I think I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I was delusionally optimistic. And I just really loved the people
Hmm.
I was working with, my colleagues. I loved the families we were helping. And it just felt like home. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Mm.
And I don't care if I don't make any money. I mean, that was for a little while. I eventually wanted to make money, but working for a nonprofit and having a very small salary, it really didn't matter when I was doing something that I loved. So that's how I got hooked after,
Got it.
for a career in therapy and in counseling. I got a taste.
Now, when did that other switch flip of, I love this, I love helping people, and I want to make a little bit more money?
Well, I decided to go back to graduate school because I had some great mentors at that nonprofit, and they kept pushing me into management. Like
Mm.
I was 25 and running a mentoring program for kids in foster care all over the state of Tennessee. And so they moved me from more kind of pseudo clinical roles into management, into supervising. And as much as I liked that, I just kept missing the work, the direct work.
Hmm.
And so some of my mentors said, Stephanie, you should probably go back to graduate school and get at least a master's. You seem to really like the clinical side. And it was in graduate school that I learned about, what you can do in private practice and how you can both help people and make a living. You don't have to sign a vow of poverty. So that was
Wow.
good to learn.
Now, where did you learn that? Because I've said many times, on the show, I learned the opposite, and that's a big part of why I do what I do. We almost had to sign that vow.
Well, it always comes back to those moments in time where it's just maybe one conversation or one person you meet or an
Hmm.
experience you have that just change your trajectory. And for me, it was meeting Stephanie Swan. She's a clinical social worker like me, but she's also a PhD, and she taught at UGA where I was in
Mm.
graduate school. And she also had a private practice, and she had started another company. And so she was entrepreneurial, and she was a clinician, and she was a teacher, and she wore many of the hats that I hope to have. And she told me, you can make a good living. She and her partner had a mountain house. And I thought, whoa, like you can have that. Uh, so she inspired me, even though most of the other people I'd learned from had taught me what I'm sure you learned in graduate school, which is, oh no, especially in social work, you're not going to make money. Like just know that going in. That was the main message I also got from most people.
So it was less that the school told you it was possible, and more that you had an example, which is
Yes,
pretty cool.
and powerful to
Yeah,
see it in action, like
yeah,
someone doing great work and making a living.
yeah. That's awesome. So, um, fast forward to where you are now, or at least in the interest of time, um, what has had or is having the biggest impact on your success as a business owner? Because, well, I met you and things were already going really well, in my opinion.
Thanks.
We can always do we can always do things better, and we're always striving to improve. But yeah, what has had impact along the way to get where you are now, and in building a successful cash pay practice,
Right.
a very specialized practice, and a group practice, which none of those things are very easy to do.
Well, I think, just like Stephanie, having a mentor, and then, honestly, got to give you a plug here, paying for a consultant to really, teach me how to do this, do the things that I want to do, but I don't know how to do. Like seeing the gap, it's like I have always, like I joked about, have had that. I think what a lot of entrepreneurs have, which is the drive, the optimism, the vision, but I haven't always had those practical skills. I didn't get an MBA, so filling in the gap and learning, like, what are my numbers? Like finally looking at my finances like I've always avoided.
Mm.
And then when I did a fellowship at Emory and learned some more clinical skills after graduating, my husband really encouraged me to go into private practice full time, even though I thought, just like most of us have been taught, no, you need to work for 10 years in an agency, or
Yeah, yeah.
you need to work for other people for a very long time. And I just knew that I didn't want to do that.
Hmm.
So I had people encourage me to both just go ahead and strike out on my own, but then to get help from people like you. And that's really helped me to just learn and to have someone hold me accountable, and to be very thoughtful about how I'm growing this. Because it is my tendency to more jump head first,
Yeah,
go ahead and do it, versus let's think about this.
totally. So, like most therapists, for you, it's never been a lack of ambition or drive. It's kind of like, what do I do with that ambition and drive, or how do I use it to do the right thing next, right? Or to or to steer things in the right direction, because there's just a
Yes,
million ways you could go and a million things you could focus on.
I have. And I've always
Yeah.
had five pots cooking. Like, oh, let me do this e-course. Oh, let me, I've done speaking engagements and workshops, and I've done a lot of the things that I really enjoy, but oftentimes I do spread myself thin and I get very excited very quickly, and I love big projects and big ideas, but it's been very helpful for me to prioritize and to think, okay, what needs to happen now and what needs to happen next for my goals or for my life. Having children really changed that for me too. Like for many parents, I think especially women, um, you know, there's nothing like a child to really change, for make you to look at your priorities, and to also keep any tendencies like workaholism, which I'm very prone to, in check, and to try to really strive for the kind of balance you want.
You've got to make your time count even more when you consider kids, a family, a husband, um,
Hmm.
and a business that can and will always kind of call for your attention if
Always.
we let it, or if we haven't built it especially well to the point where we can really trust it. And so many therapists will never really learn to trust their business, and that will just further obligate you into it, like having another child that always really needs something or that never really grows up.
It's so funny that you say that because I think of it as my other baby. It's like I have two sons, and I say this is my third baby. And it's always crying. And you're right. It's especially if you love it, if you love what you do, it can be very alluring to just say, well, I'll stay up another hour,
Hmm.
making this flyer like I did the other night. And I'm thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Like
it creeps in.
John told me to outsource this, like what am I doing? And you find yourself almost just compulsively like, oh, well, this is fun, or, ooh, I can teach myself how to do this.
Totally.
And it can take over your life. And I want to have a life. I really don't want to just become, this workaholic business owner.
Totally. Well, and there's no one that can really stop that or change that except you. Um, you're the boss. There's no other boss, and the this, for many cases, the power of a coach or a consultant is you have someone helping call you out on some of those things, or going, "Hey, here's a reason to shut your computer down. Here's a reason to not work on." Sunday evening if you don't want to, or Sunday afternoon if you don't want to, or here's the consequence that I see coming for you if you don't stop doing this. I was having that conversation the other day with someone, and it was one of those things where their partner had just started to say, "Hey, you're really working a little bit more than usual. Hey, you're really on your phone a lot at dinner. Like you're really on the phone a lot when we're in the car." And it's like we get these kind of warning signs, and sometimes it is our partner going, "Hey, it's already too much," or "I need more of you." And so, well, here I am sitting talking with a couples therapist. So you know this, or at least like
Yeah.
you help couples be better for each other. And just being a business owner is always going to add a new layer to that we really have to just work with. It's fun, it's exciting, I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way, but
Yeah.
it's also a risk that we face.
Absolutely. And I hear it all the time from my couples. And I think you said it in a podcast a while back that often our favorite clients are just like ourselves, right? And so I see, and this has been hilarious to watch. I've really cut down on my clinical hours since I'm trying to be mainly, growing my group practice. But every now and then I'll let my assistant know, okay, well, I have some room. You can let somebody in, and it'll be another couple where at least one or both are entrepreneurs. And the issues that we're talking about right now are showing up in their relationship.
Always.
And they're having the exact conversations that I have with my husband. He's an entrepreneur too. And we have to keep each other in check. It's like, hey, where are you? If they're home but the lights aren't on. If
Hmm.
stress levels are getting out of control, he's the first one to kick me out and say, hey, you need to go on a run.
Mm.
Or I do the same for him, or we go on a bike ride with our kids, or, hey, when's our next vacation? Like we need to make sure we're doing the things that I'm
That's
always
right.
preaching in couples therapy. So,
Well, and I know that your husband also has you know I guess a lot of involvement in your business, so to speak, in terms of making decisions or like scaling and the vision of the business, which I think is crucial. Um,
yeah.
I've learned to really bring my wife into more decisions that I make, or into more of the vision, because she knows me better than anyone else,
Hmm.
and
That's so
it
true.
absolutely affects her. or if I know there's going to be a really intense period coming up where I'm going to do a bunch of things, or I'm doing a launch, or you know what I mean, just some travel for work. It's like you got to bring that your partner into that, and sometimes we don't.
Oh, I am the biggest hypocrite on this. There have been so many times where, sometimes most of the time we're good, but every now and then I will just steamroll ahead, plow through, making things happen in my business. And then my poor husband is like the last one to know. And he'll say, "Wait, when's your next couples workshop?" And I'll say, "Oh, yeah, in 2 weeks." And he says, "Oh, so I'm going to be with the kids on Saturday." And so it's embarrassing, but there are times when, I have not always, kept him up to speed or included him on
Mm-hmm.
that. And those are not our best weeks as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so much better when, we laugh a lot. We both love, talking about our businesses and, encouraging each other, but also, calling each other out on some of our bad habits or tendencies. We're both workaholics at times, and so we have to make sure the other person's closing the computer. He makes me go to bed. He says, "No, no, no, no." He's like, "No work tonight. We're gonna sit on the porch with a glass of wine." It's so helpful when you have a partner who gets it and who supports you, but also challenges you.
What is that like to have a partner who is also a business owner?
The pros and the cons include the following, John. I think he understands on just a different level. He really gets how this is a passion of mine because it's a passion of his, and he has a different level of empathy and understanding. And we're both, we have the privilege. I think we've been together over 16 years. Of he helped me and encouraged me to start my business and supported me financially, and then I've done the same for him. So for both of us to be able to really depend on each other, it's been huge. It's been reciprocal, and I think hopefully it'll set a good example for our kids in terms of how we want them to think of marriage. That two people really can support each other's dreams and make it happen.
It's interesting because I've worked with a couple business owners who also their parents are or were business owners as well, and I've seen that it have some interesting effects on either end. Of on one hand, I've worked with one therapist who's like, that's my inspiration. I've seen, that's why I know I can do it. That's why I know it's all possible. You know what I mean? And that's really neat too. Or there's also on the other side of the coin, it can be, yeah, my parents ran a business and they were never there for me, or it was always the business first and then me second.
Yep.
So yeah, it's interesting to think about that impact or what your kids are seeing when they're looking at you and your husband doing your own thing, whereas yeah, maybe some of their peers, have normal jobs or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And then there is a challenge there. On our best days as a family, I've got the flexibility. I'm not starting till late. Maybe I take my kids to the zoo one day, which is down the street. And then on bad days where I haven't really stuck to my boundaries or achieved as much balance or we're not communicating, it's more of like a hand the baby off to the nanny. Okay, run this kid to the preschool, hurry up and run to your office. And and so I think, especially with, parents of young children who are entrepreneurs, it's not just a Zen balance that you achieve at some point. It's a constant renegotiating of what does balance mean now
Totally.
for us. Yeah.
Totally.
So because I don't want to be so stressed. I mean, that's the whole point of having a successful practice and helping people, is that you can love your job and you can make money, but you can have time to live your life and to be with your kids and to show them a good example of an entrepreneur, but also, that my business doesn't necessarily come first.
Mm.
That I want them and my husband to feel like a priority, even though I love my business. I ultimately want them to know that they come first,
Yeah.
and that's hard.
Well, and part of it's just being intentional so that it doesn't become something else, or it doesn't, yeah, become untenable, which is, I think, too often the case. Um, so we've talked a lot about, managing yourself, and I think that's a huge part of the role itself of owning a business, running a private practice, is becoming your own manager.
Hmm.
That is a very nuanced and difficult part of the gig. Um, Beyond that, what else has really helped, or what do you wish you knew 5 years ago?
Well, I wish I had trusted myself more. There were times when I really, maybe I was doing something because it was lucrative, but not necessarily something I enjoyed. Or I waited for a long time, say, to start the group practice out of fear, um, fear of doing something wrong, fear of judgment, from my peers. I'm a relatively younger therapist, and I've been licensed for about 7 years, and so I'm relatively new, and so the thought of starting a group practice, it just felt premature based on what a lot of people had said to me, and so I think I waited a little longer than I probably would have otherwise if I had just said, you know what, I want to do this, and I can do this.
That's so interesting to me that you got that message, because I think it's pervasive. And uh, one of the biggest splits that I had when I was in a PhD program not that long ago to become a counselor educator was, my research was in bridging the gap between academia and business. And the professors that did support that research, they left the program, and that's when things started to fall apart for me, because everyone else was saying, not only do I not support it, but like, I think you shouldn't do it at all, and I actually oppose it. Like, not only am I not going to be your your mentor or whatever, but I oppose it because therapists are just, they're not ready to run a business until a certain point. It's like they have to do nothing but develop the clinical skills until they reach that point. And yeah, I just never believed that it needed to be that true. If anything, it should be a case by case basis, right? Or for someone like you who actually had some background in sales and marketing or worked in nonprofit, to then go, therapists shouldn't get any business training in graduate school. Therapists should wait 6.257 years till they do what? It's almost like getting a driver's license, or like there's in a way there's an arbitrary kind of number that people toss out there, experts toss out there, which I think again just has a lot to do with academia trying to mitigate risk, or trying to mitigate careless young counselors getting out there and making a mess of things.
Right. And I think it's an understandable caution at
Mm-hmm.
best, but I think it is very arbitrary, like you're saying. It should be considered on a case by case basis. And so many people in our field are just so driven by fear. And versus feeling empowered with education or with coaching or with training and getting up to speed if that's something that you really want for yourself.
Well, it
Um,
doesn't, running a business doesn't have to take away from your clinical work. In fact, it can help you find better balance between, those of us who are doing, seeing 30, 35 clients a week. Um, it can be a really good thing. And especially now with the fast evolution of the internet, or even other things like online courses or podcasts or workshops or whatever, there's so many other cool things you can do. Um,
right.
you know what I mean? So I think that provides a real opportunity as well. And I know that's something that we've talked about too, in terms of where do you put your time, especially as someone who can do a bunch of different things.
Mhm.
So how do you manage that, or how have you learned to what to focus on next?
Well, I- I've really thought about my vision, and I've used some of the tools that you've helped me with, in terms of thinking of 5 years from now, where do I want to be? What does that mean for the next year? What does that mean for the next month, the next week? So really trying to stay focused and remind myself of what I'm wanting
Mm.
and how do these current options right in front of me either lead to that or
That's right.
redirect me away from that,
Yeah.
and that's it's very easy to fall into some of that sort of inattentive habit of, ooh, well, it's easier to do my billing right now. Let me do that. It's easier
Oh
to
yeah.
check Facebook. There's so many things vying for our attention and our time, that it's a lot harder, of course, to plug away at the first level order of learning, of like, okay, this is new for me. Like when you first got me to look at my KPIs, or those key performance indicators, it was so hard for me to make myself, when I got to the office, just sit down and look at it, because I'm like, what am I looking at? Wait,
What
it's
was
almost
hard
like,
about that for you?
for me, it was a new skill, like a very, what felt like, and eventually it wasn't, but my perception initially was that if I look at all of these numbers, say for how many each of my therapists are, how many clients they're seeing, what am I actually making, how many numbers of calls are we getting, all the things that I needed to know, it felt like I might, you know, that I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Just kind of this newness, and then also, of course, fear, like we were talking about, a fear that what if I think I'm successful but I'm really not?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
what if I see these numbers and it's horrible and I just got to shut this thing down quick?
It's best not to
Um,
look at all.
right. I mean, it's classic avoidance and classic anxiety.
Well, it's like knowing that, your car's been making a noise for 9 months and you just refuse to even open the hood for fear of what? For fear of not knowing what you're looking at once you do pop the hood.
Right.
And then what
Right.
what the heck am I going to do about it, or is it already kind of too late, you know?
Yeah.
Um
I'm guilty of that right now with all of the busyness of having young children.
yeah.
I need an oil change. My light just came on, and I
There you
thought,
go.
that's so annoying. I really don't want to do that right now. Thankfully, I walk to my work, so I don't really have to get in the car very often. Um, but it's on, and I'm currently ignoring it, John. So I do it in many areas of my life.
This is interesting, right? So we'll call this episode, how Stephanie ignores her check engine light. How long can Stephanie ignore her check engine light for?
Oh,
Because this is such a universal thing.
I have such a high tolerance for ignoring flashing lights, right? And it's just
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
with your phone. I turned off, text messages and all of those
Good.
things for a very long time. And there's some healthy ways that we can turn off all the flashing lights that are vying for our attention. And then there's some unhealthy things like, no, this is really important. I need to know how my business is really doing. I need to regularly look at
Hmm.
these numbers. That's a flashing light that I have had to make a habit
Hmm.
to look at, even though I don't enjoy it as much as checking Facebook.
Yeah. No, it sucks. Listen, I never said it was fun. you know,
Well,
people,
oh,
I was laughing.
right away.
Even when people in the group are like, I know I need to check my numbers, John. I know I need to do it. Like, I
Right,
know I'm
right.
supposed to do it, and I'm like, hey, I can't make you, but it's kind of your own anxiety that's going to take hold first, because again, you can only drive that car for so long
Mhm.
until this kind of subterranean anxiety is always there of like, I know something's kind of either loose or could be better, or
Mm.
and again, I don't have to be the expert, I don't have to be the mechanic, you don't have to know how to fix every part of your car, but you need to generally know how it works and what its vital signs are.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that KPIs really allow you to do, is it's not only a dashboard. So, what's the temperature of the engine right now? What are the RPMs? Like, is my gas full? Okay, there's three measures. Your KPIs are a lot deeper than that, and it's more like taking blood work, and of a person. So, let's see how we can bridge these two metaphors. It's not going to go
Blood,
well.
engines. Let's see. No, I think you're absolutely right, and part of your role that's helped me is you're kind of like the teacher, and I've always been, like I said, the dork, the straight A student,
Mm, that's
and
why we
and
work
so
well
as long,
together.
I
You're
mean,
like the
I
kid in the
like
front
you told
seat,
me
the
this.
front of the row of the class.
Please call
And
on
I'm
me,
like,
teacher.
I know you can sit a few rows, you can sit a few rows back, and you're like, no, this seat is good.
Yeah, I'm right up. I am the sit up in the front student, and
That's great.
always
That's great.
always have been. And it is bringing me back to, I remember elementary school, they'd sit me between the kids who had behavioral issues.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was the one who would shush them and say, "Hey, I'm here to learn. Okay,
Yep.
all right, y'all be quiet."
That's good.
Um, but having the KPIs and having a coaching group, you're the person that says, "Hey guys, you said you were gonna do XYZ," and and then I either have that moment of, you got me, I didn't do it, or yeah, I did it. Please give me some validation here and keep helping me try to achieve my goals I keep telling you about.
That's it. It's it's a matter of once you do get familiar with that tool, for instance, or any tool that helps you know your numbers, it, it becomes not something that causes anxiety, but actually something that reduces your anxiety. And in fact, there was someone else in our group one day that said that very thing, which is that actually I look at my numbers when I'm anxious because it helps me feel like, whew, I know that things are running well. Because sometimes we get into this reactive kind of mode of, I feel, keyword feel, that my business isn't going well, or my business isn't growing, or I'm not profitable, or I feel that I'm really profitable. And then we go, okay, cool, that's good to know that feeling, but also what do the numbers say? So it can be something that really gives you a lot of relief once you acquire this skill of checking things again, of checking the oil, checking the tire pressure, right? Checking, the battery of your car, all these things that are really not that hard to do. But again, you just needed someone to show you how to do those things and then to really make it a habit, right? So to do it for 30 days and go, now that you know how to check those things, do it at least, do it once a week for the next 30 days. And let's make it a habit, see how you feel. And then you also start making way better decisions in your business that are actually based on something other than feeling, which is how I did it for a long time, until I looked at this stuff. And I said in a recent episode with Lynn Summerman, my financial coach, I'll never forget the moment where she looked deep at my numbers in one business and said, "Oh, you're not profitable." And I thought I was wildly profitable. That sucked so bad, but I kind of knew it was coming in a way, but it meant that I had to make some harder decisions, and it meant that I had to resist a part of myself that would rather just kind of wing it and just be like, oh, I'm just creative, let me just do this, or hire that extra person because they're really cool, they seem great,
I relate to that so much, and I did listen to that episode, and that helped me too. And this is my first year having hired a CPA, and really trying to be just aware and to feel empowered to these numbers. It's such a different mindset. And I've been terrified for so long. And that's something I want people to know too, is if you're avoiding your numbers, if you're classic wing it person like me too, please just go ahead and bite the bullet and learn how this works and get into the habit of just looking at it and making friends with it rather than being scared of it or just seeing it as an annoyance or something that I'll get to later. Like it really can help you make better decisions. And also, like you said, reduce your anxiety. Like it really does help me to reduce my anxiety too, to see everything clearly.
Absolutely.
And to not just wonder. Mm-hmm. I thought I was profitable for a while too with some things and I wasn't. And it is very, it's sobering, but it's necessary to know that.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, from high school reunions to check engine lights,
right,
to stand-up comedy, which I'm a huge fan of. Almost all the podcasts I listen to are stand-up comedians. And I was telling someone the other day, I was like, I know what day it is because of which podcast comes out that day.
Oh, that's awesome.
They release weekly, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if one doesn't come out, I feel like I'm walking crooked the whole day.
But you're waiting on it. You're itching.
Yeah, just waiting to breathe.
It's so helpful, especially for me when I'm doing boring things like folding laundry or, things that I really don't want to do. I love listening to stand up and just laughing. So if you think of laundry, maybe, and you don't have a way of getting through it, consider stand up.
It makes all tasks. I was just doing dishes before this interview, listening to my favorite comedy podcast. Most of them would offend people profoundly, or some people profoundly. I don't know. Therapists, we need to have kind of thick skin in a way, because it's like we hear really intense stuff as therapists.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Our favorite, we have safe comedians that my husband and I will say that we like
yeah,
when we're in mixed company. Like if we don't know kind of the temperature of the room, we don't know what people find funny, we don't
hmm
know what people find offensive, we'll say Jim Gaffigan.
that's a good
Uh,
one. Very
he's real
harmless.
safe, real
Yeah,
safe.
just makes fun of how fat he is, basically, which is funny for days.
And he talks about Pop Tarts, and
Yeah.
he stays, he's very safe. He's still hilarious, but he makes fun of things like also just situations. He's very Seinfeld safe.
Oh yeah.
You
Yep.
know, he's situational. But if you really want to get to know someone, ask them like what they laugh at. Like, but
Oh yeah.
they're afraid of admitting to.
I'm very afraid of admitting my playlist. My
That's
wife
okay.
is appalled by all of my podcasts. I have to listen with headphones if we're like in the car together. Um, so I don't know what that says about me. Now you've got me thinking.
No, it's funny. I won't say who, but I went to when I was in DC for a conference recently. I went to see a stand-up comedian, one of my husband's favorites, and I looked around, and everyone looked like him. It was so funny. Everyone
Oh
looked like
yeah.
my.
That's
He
that
definitely
makes
has a
sense.
demographic,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so I won't out him for some of his favorite comedians, and I definitely won't out myself in this episode. But I think that's a good getting to know you question.
We'll keep that in mind, and we can talk about our favorite shows off air. And
Yeah, let's do
I'll
it.
work up the courage to let people know what I really listen to. Well, as we wrap up, if there is there anything missing, or if you could just give one quick piece of advice that you wish every therapist could hear, what would it be? No pressure.
I think really, really be honest with yourself. Like what you were saying the other day, something about, again, I can't quote you, but what would you do if you really weren't afraid?
Mm.
And that really spoke to me. And that's something that is something I've said to myself for a while too, that always keeps me grounded and helps me, reorient myself. Like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, do I want to be doing this? Especially with my business decisions. And so really be honest with yourself. What do I want to be doing? What's smart here? Not just what do I feel, but what's logical, what's both. And that has helped me enormously. When I've made mistakes, it's because I've ignored that. When I've really made some big mistakes, it's because I've ignored, what I really want to be doing.
Awesome advice. I love it. Very practical, but also very kind of philosophical in a way. Um, there you have it, folks. Stephanie Cook at, I'm going to say your URL, and I'm going to not screw it up. counselingatl.com. I don't know why I was afraid of screwing that up.
You
Maybe I
got
should
it.
get therapy. Counselingatl.com. We'll put a link to your site and everything for what
Okay.
it's worth. Also a great example of a great site that I know you've worked really hard on, and even since I've known you worked really hard on. So good work on that. And so head there if you want to check Stephanie out. Stephanie, thank you again for being here, and I will see you very soon.
See you soon. Bye.